Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Today, we have a very special guest who we've talked about on the podcast before, Paul Scanlan, the co-founder and CEO of LegionM. For those of you who don't know, LegionM is the first ever fan-owned entertainment company. LegionM partners with top Hollywood creators, from independent filmmakers to big Hollywood studios, to produce movies, TV, digital content, and some that you might have heard of. Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, Mandy, Memory, The Origins of Alien, Colossal, The Man in the White Van, Save Yourselves, and the list just keeps going on and on. So full disclosure, for everyone listening, I am an investor in LegionM and have been since the beginning. The first time I saw the LegionM launch video, I was hooked on their new business model and got really excited to see them grow over the years. So with that said, let's jump in and get started. Good morning, Paul. How you doing?
Good morning. Great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. This is a big treat for us. I wore my LegionM sweatshirt, and I'm ready to jump in and dig into your company a little bit.
I love it. Well, thank you for your support and enthusiasm. I mean, that's what Legion M is all about: is uniting people together.
Awesome. So, hey, I know you've explained this a million times, but for our listeners, some of them may not have heard of LegionM, except for when Demetrius and I had mentioned it on a previous podcast. Can you explain the origins of LegionM and then why specifically this company you wanted to start?
Yeah, sure. So Legion M, well, we're the world's first fan-owned entertainment company, and what that means is we're literally entertainment company, a movie and TV studio that's owned by fans. And we started it to be owned by fans from day one. Like 100% of our equity is owned by people like you that are excited about what we're doing. And our purpose and our mission is to redefine what it means to be a shareholder while also reshaping an industry that we love. And we're uniting a vibrant and engaged community to, in a nice way, take over Hollywood. So
Yeah.
we like to talk about the origin story of how this kind of came to be. My co-founder Jeff Annison and I have been working together for 20 years. We started another company with another colleague way back in early 2000 that put TV on cell phones, and we had an incredible rise and success with that project and with that company. 3 years after being told it was the dumbest idea that Hollywood had ever heard of, we're on stage accepting an Emmy Award for technological advancement. And so, we're here to disrupt again and to do something that we think is, worthwhile. A lot of people, when we describe our company, or, look at us and, wow, that's such a good idea. Why has no one ever done this before?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is that, and this is getting to that origin story, up until 2016, the whole idea, the only way to go and do a fan-owned entertainment company like that legally would be to take it publicly immediately on the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. And, that's just a very high bar and a kind of, unrealistic thing to do. And that's why no one had done it before. But in 2016, the SEC redefined and updated their securities laws so that the average investor, Main Street investor, can invest in startups. Most people don't realize that up until 2016, even if your best friend or your brother or your sister was starting a company and you wanted to invest in them legally, the only people allowed to invest in startups were the top 3%. The wealthy elite. You needed to be what the SEC determined as an accredited investor, meaning you make either $300,000 a year, or you have more than $1 million in net value, not including your home. Most people were locked out of startup investments, and if you look at our economy, it's driven by startups. I mean,
Yeah.
Some of the biggest companies on the planet didn't exist 10 years ago and are startups. And, those investment opportunities have been the domain of the wealthy elite exclusively up until 2016. So when these new rules were made available, Jeff and I, as I mentioned, we had been involved in multiple companies together. We saw a once in a lifetime chance to disrupt Hollywood, open the gates to Hollywood is what we call it. If you think of the entertainment industry is 100% driven by fans. We buy the
Hmm.
tickets, we decide what to watch. We're the reason why there's advertising. We're the eyeballs and everything. But the fans have always been kind of on the outside of the industry. The industry has been kind of exclusive. They'll tell you what they're going to make, and they'll tell you when. And we just want to flip that script and try something new.
So,
Oh, and redefine what it means to be a shareholder in the process.
yeah, which I think is super interesting part of it. And one of the things Demetrius and I had talked about in the past was that like there is no way to invest into a movie, right? Like kind of if you wanted to invest into a stock, right, you can be on E-Trade, or if you wanted to invest into a startup company and you happen to maybe work there, you can get shares, or if you're an angel investor and things like that. But yeah, everything is kind of locked up. But did you notice this opportunity while you were running Moby TV and kind of thinking about Hollywood? And then it just aligned with the fact that they opened it up, or did the opening of that new investor class create the idea?
Yeah, it's a really great question actually. When we look back at it, I think it was the collision of these two things. So one of the things that we recognize with Moby TV, we were very successful, but we were a technology platform. We were aggregating content. And so we were beholden to the studios. We would be licensing ESPN or Disney and CNN and all these channels. And what we recognize is that content is king.
Hmm.
To be a technology platform is valuable. And, Netflix went through the same enlightenment, and got into content and
Yeah.
started, creating their own content. And so I think it was a collision of that realization that, hey, you know what, technology is amazing, but, in a hit driven business, being the content provider can be really, really valuable.
Hmm.
And at the same time, these new securities laws were creating this profound opportunity to unite a community of people. In fact, I'm doing a TEDx talk on this very subject at the end of May 30th, about the power of community. Because at the end of the day, we've raised venture capital, and venture capital is amazing. Some of my best friends are venture capitalists, and I like that they are there to help spur and spawn creativity and innovation. A lot of the technologies and the progress that we've made wouldn't be possible without venture capital. But with these new securities laws, you're getting venture capital money. You're getting your startup seed capital and, effectively your Series A, Series B. But more than that, you're getting a community of people that are supporting you along the way.
Hmm.
And, our goal is to unite 1 million people. If you look at our logo, it's an M with a bar over it, which is a Roman numeral for 1 million. LegionM wants to be a community of 1 million people to take over Hollywood. And if you imagine, so right now, the average investor puts $300 in. The
Yep.
minimum investment's $100. We tell anyone considering investment, we're a startup. The reason the SEC had, these rules was that they didn't want people investing their life savings in startups, because statistically, most startups fail.
Yeah.
Right. So we tell anyone considering an investment, do not invest more than you can afford to lose. The odds are absolutely stacked against us. We don't want anyone believing that this is a surefire bet. And that's why the minimum investment's only $100, right? So that's like, gambling money. Now, of course, people do invest more than that. But, we really try to encourage people to, just recognize the risk. Now,
Yeah.
we believe we could be one of those companies that defies the odds. Absolutely. That's why we're betting our careers, on this opportunity. But we just want people to understand the risk. But so if you think of it at scale, we'll have raised 300 to 400 million dollars from a million people, the average being $300 to 400, to invest in projects that have a built-in audience
Hmm.
of a million plus people.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to argue that if we had that today, we wouldn't be one of the most influential companies in Hollywood.
Oh, absolutely. And you see this already with Hollywood directors and things like that have huge followings just online, like whether it be on Twitter and things like that. They
Mhm.
mention about a movie, they mention about some new project that's coming out, and suddenly they get huge fan engagement. You get a lot of reviews, you get people thinking about it, talking about it, and spreading the word. It's funny when you said a million fans. The thing that came to mind was about 10 years ago, the CEO of Google had said, one of my goals, I think it was about 10, maybe 15 years ago, said one of my goals is to have a million engineers working on amazing projects that change the world. Right. And I think they're about a quarter of the way there. And people thought they were crazy, but like that's a big number, but it's also a big influence if you're doing something great. So I
Exactly.
love that you're doing that. I am very curious though, like how Hollywood in particular feels about what you're doing, because there's this old model of Hollywood that I think we all hear about, learn about, kind of
Mhm.
see in movies. You go out, you pitch your stuff, you hope that the studio picks you up. Well, you're really shaking that up. And like, how do they respond to this new kind of movement?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, we have been really surprised at the reaction, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
We were expecting, just like we had with Moby TV, you know, we had a lot of resistance with Moby TV, including some executives that told us it was the stupidest thing they'd ever seen, which who later became our friends and dedicated the rest of their career to, TV outside the living room on cell phones and everything else. And so, what I would say is that, the industry, there's a part of the industry that is still kind of scratching their heads, wondering, like, what are they doing? But then there's the other part of it. Like, I just got off a phone call this morning for a movie that we haven't announced yet. And they're absolutely getting it.
Yeah.
The nice thing about LegionM, we always say, like, disruption can take a lot of different forms. There are disruptors like Napster that
Hmm.
can be very negative for an industry and kind of set the industry back. Maybe it's good for, the audiences and for consumers, but, the industry had to sort of build back from a huge setback. The nice thing about LegionM is we add value. We're not
Hmm.
taking anything away. We're actually, one of the things that Hollywood is beholden to their built-in audiences. And that's why we have a lot of franchises and a lot of sequels and reboots and all these things, which are fine and good and amazing. And that's when, if you're owned by Wall Street, that's what you have to stick to, because your built-in audience is for that franchise. It's not for your and anything the company decides to do, and if the
Hmm.
company's listening to fans and doing things that the fans want. What we're creating with Legion M is an opportunity for the industry to make bets on new franchises, but have this safety net of the built-in audience, supporting it, and to pre-vet those ideas so that we know when we do introduce something, that we're not coming out of left field and surprised when, the audiences don't love it.
Yeah, and recently Demetrius and I had done a podcast on this and talked about how Hollywood is really looking at, streaming, and they're looking at like big data helping them make decisions about films, kind of like Film Scout, what you're doing, where it's like I want to kind of crowdsource people's opinions and ideas so that we can have a better chance of being successful at this particular film. And one of the things that we noticed was that Sylvester Stallone had done an interview recently and said, I really do not think that Rocky would have been made today. If I went and knocked at Universal or any of these places and said, I want to make this film, it's called Rocky and all that, because it doesn't fit in the model you're describing of Hollywood focusing mostly on franchises. But now that you are coming in, Legion M is coming in, and potentially some others, do you see a greater opportunity for younger filmmakers, independent films, great stuff from Sundance Film Festival, where you can grab that content and then kind of get it out to your fans, but also beyond that?
Absolutely. I mean, this is literally. I mean, we're very mission oriented. Like, we are with Legion M. We're, uniting this community together as a movement. We want to be a movement and a force of change in an industry, and that change can be hearing from new voices, wildly original new franchises, taking bets. Hollywood's a hit driven business, and because of that, it's like gambling in a little, and you make the best bet that you can, you get the best cast, the best director, you get the writing, but ultimately when you put it out, you just don't know, and
Yeah.
you're hoping that it hits, and things align, and we want to change that calculus. We want to change the calculus and if you imagine, like, if you go to Vegas and you're
Hmm.
gambling in Vegas, you don't need to change the odds that dramatically for it to be really worthwhile, right? And the same is true in Hollywood. I mean, we tell people, because investing in movies is a risky business. It's risky, but it can be de-risked with the right model, and that's what we're focused on, is how do we change the odds for success, and then how do we add value to an industry by being the propagator, the instigator for new franchises, and to hear from new voices. I mean, if you look at a lot of our projects, they're exactly that. Colossal, when it first came out, that was our first project that we did. Nacho Vigalando's Colossal with Jason Sudeikis. That movie was described as wildly original. This is a movie that the studio execs would look at and go, "What?" Like, but fans loved it, and
Hmm.
and the movie is stands. It stands the test of time. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
amazing movie.
Yeah.
But so yeah, these are the things that we're seeking to change, and we're here to add value in that direction.
So I'm curious about the pitch. So, for example, you were saying, you were talking with someone on the phone earlier, or whatever, about a new movie, right? One of the things that our listeners don't have insight into, but everybody wants insight into, is what does it really take to do that? Like, you are thinking, okay, I think we need another film on our docket, right? And you
Hmm.
want to go through that process. Can you give us kind of the inside scoop of what that process looks like? Are you calling
Sure.
studios? Are you pitching ideas? Are filmmakers coming to you? Like, what does that experience look like from a kind of day-to-day operation standpoint?
It's a really good question, and the answer is a little. There are a couple different ways. So it's not one. It's not like one pathway where things come into LegionM. But so I'll describe a couple of them, but I want to preface it with everything we do with our community in mind. So we're constantly under trying to understand what our community is interested in, and
Mhm.
whenever possible we go out to our community. We just did an Impulse earlier this week. Impulse is our opportunity. Anyone in our community can give us their feedback on not only the movies that we've already done, but movies that we might be doing, directors and talent and casts that they really like. We test log lines there. So
Mhm.
when we have, at any one point in time, when we started the company, we were really, it was when we were just getting going, it was harder. Now we have way access to way more projects than we can possibly do. Everyone is bringing their projects to us. We're also looking out using some of our scouting platforms, and we have something that we're going to be introducing in May. I'll give you a little sneak peek about it. We have a reading club that'll be coming out
Oh, nice.
next month, which I think is going to be amazing. We've done a little bit of this before, and we do option books and book series to turn them into a television series or a movie franchise, and we want to do more of that. But what we do is we're always trying to get the feedback and insight from our community. You mentioned Film Scout earlier
Hmm.
in the podcast. That's another part of our platform that is designed to identify the best films at film festivals, but it's also a fun game. It's like playing fantasy sports
Yeah.
for, film buffs. So our community has fun. We rank everybody. We have, elite scouts in our community. Those elite scouts actually, because they've now proven over the course of multiple seasons of Film Scout that they have their finger on the pulse of what the community wants. So the way Film Scout works is we put all the films from a film festival in there, and everyone goes in and decides, okay, so if you're basically reviewing the film for what your interest is, but you're also predicting as a
Hmm.
film scout, as a film, acquisition executive, how would you predict, are these viable commercially? And then, of course, if you go to the film festival, you can write a review so we can start predicting what the Rotten Tomato scores are. All that data is so valuable to us because it
Hmm.
tells us not only what our community is interested in, it also helps us identify who in our community really knows what the public is, good
Hmm.
at. And so now we have, a subset of our community that is, that we can go to when we have questions that we don't want to put out in a public manner. We can ask them, or if we get a screener, or we could invite them to look at and read a script. So there's all this data. So and I think that was my preface. I want to make sure that everything we do, we want to do it like we're only as good as how well we pick these projects, because
Hmm.
if we're not representing our community, then people will lose interest and go away. So we have to do a good job there. Now, as far as the projects, we have a lot of our own industry contacts and movies being pitched to us all the time. We also have projects that have come to us from our Legion community. Man in the White Van, Warren Skeels, the director and writer of that film, is a
Yep.
LegionM investor,
Yep.
and he happened to know Terry. They went to college together, and so he had this pretty cool project. Our Right around that exact same time, so we knew we had this true crime drama, or true crime thriller script. We had a financier that was interested in looking for thrillers, and our community had just told us that they wanted true crime. It was a genre that we hadn't done yet. So we triangulated in on that and said, okay, well, let's flesh this out a little bit. Let's read the script. Let's work on this with Warren. Let's get the financier to the table, and now we have a movie that then we went through the casting and everything else. Sean Astin, Ali Larder, Madison Wolfe, and that movie, we're in post production on it now.
That's awesome. Yeah, that one looks really good. I saw that Sean
Yeah,
Astin was in
it's
there, and I
great.
was like, "Wow, that's a nice name to land." He's really
Yeah,
doing well right now. Um,
yeah.
I I see something going on here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a Silicon Valley guy, but you're also in Hollywood now. And what I'm seeing is I'm seeing the kind of Hollywood movie production side evolving with Legion M, but I also see the tech side starting to build up. And so I suspect that you're kind of also looking at this data and some of these apps and these things that you're developing to assist the community. They also are very valuable as a general understanding of kind of how people think, their sentiment, and what's going on in the industry itself. Am I kind of reading between the
You're
lines here that?
absolutely right. Yeah, there's no coincidence there. It's a deliberate thing, and it's part of the reason why Jeff and I are up in Northern California, and the main team is down in LA. We deliberately want Legion M to not be a pure Hollywood company, and it's not a
Hmm.
pure technology company. It's a mashup of those two things, because we really feel like Legion M. When we look at it as a whole, one of the most important components of it is the platform. And the platform is the technologies that we develop and the techniques that we develop that allow us to effectively harness the insight and wisdom that we have access to. So, one part of it is growing this community. But if we're only growing the community and then not really, harnessing its power,
Hmm.
the power to provide insight before we, develop and choose a project, but also the power, obviously when we release a project. We have
Yeah.
a part of our platform called the Meetup Maker. So when we're releasing movies, our community can host a meetup where other investors come together on opening weekend, and we can really drive box office sales using this, because everyone loves going to the movies, especially if you're an investor in that movie and you've been along for the ride when we cast and went through this whole experience. You're a part of helping create this movie, and now you can create your own experience where you're meeting other investors Everyone's bringing friends and family. Some of our meetups, our release meetups, will literally sell out theaters.
Hmm. Yeah,
Just
that's awesome.
Legion M. I mean, can you imagine how valuable is that? I mean, we want to get to a point where, our bottom line, like the worst case scenario, is we break even just with our own community watching the movie.
Mhm.
And the best case scenario is, beyond anything, beyond, the upside that we would have had without a community.
Yeah, and speaking about like movie theaters and things like that, obviously the pandemic created a rapid acceleration of people really, really wanting to consume content from streaming services and in their home. And we already saw that trend. You're very familiar with all this, as it's been trending since 2010. But then with the movie theaters kind of shutting down or slowing down drastically like that, how has that affected your decision making when it comes to picking films or TV series, or even trying to option other things like The Girl with No Name and that kind of stuff? Like, how does it change your thinking?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it absolutely did. I mean, we saw the writing on the wall. Even before the pandemic, we were already edging toward TV. Movies. And we're always going to do movies, and there's always a space for movies. But we had said from the get go that we want to be doing movies, TV series, and other forms of entertainment ultimately. But right now, the best place for us to start was independent film. We could get in there. We had a lot of relationships, Tim League and the Neon guys and Alamo and all this, and that's been amazing. Right before the pandemic, we had announced a handful of TV series, and one of them was really big and ambitious. Actually, a couple of them, or all of them, are ambitious, but um, we repositioned it as an animated series because, and when we started pitching it, we realized that, oh, wait a minute, because of the pandemic, it's going to be hard for, big cast to get together and shoot a live action movie, or a live action series. And so we repositioned it as an animated series, and then we sold it. So we've already sold, and it's in production. Well, it's in writing, the writing phase right now. So we haven't been able to release the details on that yet. Unfortunately, we wish we could, but we're under NDA with the buyer, the streamer that bought it. What they have allowed us to say is that we've sold a series, an animated series, to a major streamer, and it's an amazing deal for Legion M. Like, and it's a icebreaker for us to do more TV,
Yeah.
because now with this, in our slate and as part of our track record, we want to do more of it, and this is why we're looking at doing the reading room, and our relationships with other buyers is really developing. And yeah, I think movies will always play a role, but I think TV series have been a bright spot for the industry.
I mean, let's be honest, like some of the TV series are better than movies, right? They're so
Yeah, they
good.
are.
You're so
Yeah.
dialed into them. All of us have our favorites, but their production value is very, very high. And one of the things that Demetrius and I had noticed was that Apple TV and some of the other providers, as they started to come into the market and really kind of have an impact, there's been a lot more work for actors, right? So there's a lot more opportunity. And then also I noticed that they started building more studios in Hollywood and Vancouver and other areas to kind of keep up with this demand. Do you see this as just a pure amazing opportunity for the timing of your business? Or does it actually make it more challenging because there's more competition and, what I mean, for people's eyeballs?
I would say it's the former. I mean, it's absolutely, a heyday right now. I mean, there's a lot of buyers. I think, even with the kind of recent news at Netflix,
Hmm.
I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I
No.
mean, what it means is that Netflix isn't the only buyer that matters.
Hmm.
There's a lot of buyers
Yeah.
that matter, and I think that opens the floodgates for Legion M. And if you look at some of these, the values that that the industry is putting on some of these companies like Hello Sunshine
Yeah.
or A24 just got an investment at a very high valuation. What it tells you is that the content matters. And the companies that have a track record of creating content, and that's squarely the space that LegionM is in. You know, we're this sort of in this kind of undefined category because we are very much entrenched in we are creating content, but we also have this really compelling technology component of it that's not
Yeah.
Netflix, but it's unique that today no one else has. That I think makes us even more valuable ultimately. I mean, we still have a long way to go. You know, Legion M is we're still, a startup. We're still
Hmm.
proving ourselves, but I teach a class on entrepreneurship for Northwestern Kellogg.
Awesome.
Just one class a year
Yeah.
in the winter semester. They come out from Evanston to take classes out here in Silicon Valley, I guess, or in San Francisco downtown.
Yeah.
And I always tell the students, typically as an entrepreneur, you'll never be more bullish about your company than the day before you started. And then that week that you get into it, you're like, whoa, all right, this is going to be hard. And you hit reality and you start realizing, how much harder it is to start a company. But one of the exciting things that I like to talk about with Legion M is that we are way more bullish about it now than we were like when we started. We were excited about it, but we were nervous. We just didn't know. And Jeff and I like to take chances, so we put it out there and we said, hell or high water, let's go do this and see what happens. And now we're 5+ years into it, and we're just, I mean, we're so excited. We still, like I said, we still have a long way to go, but we really feel like we've proven something, like so
Hmm.
much that I feel like Legion M is the first one of the early incarnations of a wave of new types of companies,
Yeah.
community oriented companies that are owned by a community of people that can be supportive and helpful. And I think that's really powerful. I mean, that's what my TEDx talk will be about is, I think communities, the power of global digital communities are potentially one of the most powerful tools on the planet for
Yeah.
affecting change.
Yeah.
And if you think of it, and if you look through history, it's always been that way. But now more than ever, we talk about the democratization of, all these components and the sharing economy and all these things. They're all converging at once. And now it's possible for, people like me and Jeff to go unite our own community. It's not just, it used to be the royalty, they were in charge of the communities. But that playing field has been leveled. Anyone can go start a community now and
Yeah.
grow it.
And I remember early on when you guys one of your investor meetings, you were talking about how you'd walk into these meetings and you'd pitch and you'd have to really explain to them what you're doing, like in many different ways. Normal startup pitching, right? You're like, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, right? Has that changed over the last 5 years? Like, do you feel like people better understand where you're going with it? Because early on, I understood where you're going with it, but my only thought in my head was, is like, how do you convince these actors and things like that that your mission is something they should link their time and energy into? So, do you feel
Yeah,
like now it's you're not that you're better at it now, but like, well, maybe you are better at it. But I'm just saying, like, do
we
you
are.
feel like it's easier, let's say, to walk into a meeting and make that happen?
Well, I think it's a really good point. And when I think about it, I think we have absolutely honed our message, so it's clearer. I think the other element that's been really beneficial is a lot of times, like a much higher percentage of the time, the people that we're talking to have already heard about us, and someone has already pitched them about it and
Yeah.
told them about it, or they heard about it on your podcast or read about it in the LA Times, wherever, right? So, and that adds value because now you're not starting from a cold start. You've got a warmer audience. I mean, the case in point is William Shatner.
Yeah.
He recently joined our advisory board, and that process was really interesting because David Baxter, our VP of development, he and I ran into William Shatner in the green room at Silicon, or Silicon, they call it. It's Silicon Valley Comic Con. You guys may have been there.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
you just randomly ran into William Shatner.
well, we were, yeah. I think David knew he would be there, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, we were literally in this big room because it was for, speakers only. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like out on the show floor. Um, he was sitting at a table by himself, and we approached really cautiously because the last thing we want to do is just be
Oh,
annoying. And
absolutely.
we
Yeah. Yeah.
figure he's been, interacting with people all day, and he looked like he was just, trying to catch some rest and relax and be left alone. So we were real sensitive. David had a connection to him and had met him on the set of another movie, and so he went over. We introduced ourselves, and you know, Shatner sitting here with his arms crossed and like everything about his body language was, I really don't want to talk to you guys right now.
Yeah.
And David said, hey, I just I know, we won't bother you, but I just want you to hear about our company, and Paul, my colleague, will introduce it. And so I start to describe it to him, and literally within the third sentence, he's leaning forward, he's listening, and his arms aren't
Mm.
crossed anymore, and he's smiling. And it was just this total, and now he's completely engaged in the conversation. He's asking me really smart questions. And, he finishes it, he didn't want to talk. He's like, okay, I'm really interested in what you're doing. I think that sounds amazing. And here's a number, call this number and let's set up a phone call. And so then we had a phone call, we had another meeting, and, he just got more engaged and more engaged. And now we still have some announcements to make. I mean, we announced that he joined our advisory board, but that's the tip of the iceberg. And that was just something that he asked a lot of good questions about he doesn't want to just get involved with anyone, and who knows what kind of people we are. And so he wanted to get to know us and talk to people that knew us. And once he felt comfortable, then he joined, and now it's been amazing. We have this really collaborative relationship. He wrote an op-ed on why he thinks LegionM is such an interesting company.
Yep.
And to be honest, we're not paying. It's not like Priceline where like he's our spokesperson and we're paying him.
Yeah.
He's getting involved because he believes in what we're doing, and he believes that it's a worthwhile thing for him to spend his time on. And he's getting a little bit of equity in the company, but that's it. And it's not,
Yeah.
he wasn't, greedy about it or anything. He's just like, okay, let's do this. I'm excited.
Well, I mean, when you pitch the idea of like a fan-owned company like that, and getting people engaged and excited about opportunities, I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer, especially if you guys are doing this super hard work of really delivering these cool movies and films and experiences like that. And I see a lot of change happening. I did have this one question, and Demetrius, hopefully can kind of jump in on this. Is that you've worked with Kevin Smith before? And I don't know if you've noticed, heard recently that Kevin Smith is releasing kind of this new way of, I don't know, like sharing his content with NFTs. And
Hmm.
so like
Yep.
people kind of like own the rights to do things with the content after they have kind of committed to ownership of that. And I was wondering what your thoughts are of bringing that kind of new type of technology to a kind of traditionally kind of older way of thinking, the way Hollywood works and functions. Like, do you feel like they just jump right in and accept that stuff, or do you feel like this is just the beginning of a new movement?
You know, I mean, I would say that I do. I feel like it is the beginning of a new movement. In Legion M, we will absolutely, utilize NFTs in
Hmm.
various different formats. And we see it as having a valuable contribution, and the blockchain as well. Jeff and I we don't like just jump on trends because
Yeah.
they're trendy,
Yep.
and we want to be careful. And, the first time that the crypto, trend came around, we were really like wondering, like, are we missing out on something? But at the same time, we don't want to be, we want to be clean, well lit.
Yeah.
We want everything to be, we want to be SEC compliant. We just wanted all those things. We weren't ready to bet the company on something that had,
Hmm.
some risk factors. We have enough risk factors, so,
Yeah.
but, increasingly, so now we're at a point where we don't need to bet the company on these things, but we can explore them. And we
Yeah.
absolutely are. We just brought on a consultant that's going to be helping us with this, and our VP of merchant licensing has been going really deep. Jeff and I have been taking a lot of meetings. We've also, because it's so important to us, been polling our community to
Hmm.
find out, hey, is this something that you want us to do? Is it something that, do you buy NFTs today? And so we have all this data now from our community about, their interest level, but also, what they've done with crypto and NFTs and everything else. So that we can, when we do something, we can do it informed by this data. But I do feel like it's inevitable. Like, I do think it can be a valuable contributor. Like I said, we're not going to bet the farm on it, so that if
Sure.
it does turn out to be, just a blip, and, things evolve beyond it, we're not, stuck. But at the same time, it feels like, we like a lot of the value,
Yeah.
and just like what you said, it's another way of bringing fans into the development and release and monetization of content.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was doing that I was going to share with you is that I was listening to Kevin Connolly's Action Park Media. He has a podcasting company
Hmm.
right in Hollywood, and they are partnering with Mark Cuban and Fireside Chat, and like trying to do some stuff with NFTs for Doug Ellen, who created Entourage. He's trying to figure out a way to kind of weave those things in and kind of create some fan engagement around that, which is it made me think a lot about you guys and how like I'm seeing it there. But what I'm actually getting at is that there's little whispers of these new ways of thinking about fan engagement, new ways of thinking about connection and ownership with fans. And because I keep hearing these little bits here and there, I'm starting to feel like maybe you guys had a big influence on kind of like changing the process. And now with the new technology kind of evolving, there's new ways to excite the fans. And one of the things I did do is I actually went and looked, as a side note, at all the comments of when this was announced with Action Park Media.
Hmm.
And they've got hundreds of thousands of people that listen to these podcasts. And there were so many comments that are like, we're in, like, we want to be part of this. We want to kind of own our own token, so we could say that we're part of this movie. And I saw that excitement and I thought to myself, okay, it's moving. The ball is rolling down the hill. And I wanted your take on it because I feel like you guys were the ones that started this for real.
Yeah.
Like 5 years ago, you guys were the ones that started this process.
Well, I appreciate that, and we want to be one of the starters. We also be want to be one of the finishers, and we feel like all boats rise. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, we are excited by all the development. We really feel like we have maybe broken the seal a little bit on this, and gotten people. I think crowdfunding had, like, non-equity, but just regular crowdfunding had started it, but
Hmm.
it didn't really get to the sort of mainstream end, to the level of, the premium content,
Hmm.
where you're literally, talking to the creator of Entourage, like,
Yeah.
and people like that are paying attention to it. I think that's really exciting, because it's when we first started, not only did we have to explain it to everybody, but there were certain individuals, that were just a little bit afraid of it.
Hmm.
They felt like, oh well, I don't want to be crowdfunding, and we're like, no, no, don't. We get that. We're not crowdfunding. We're equity crowdfunding.
Hmm.
Crowdfunding are donations to, I mean, crowdfunding has a place too, and it's valuable. But a lot of celebrities don't want to be, crowdfunding, because it feels like you're asking for donations.
Yeah.
But now, the way, and we have some exciting things that we'll be announcing, over the course of the next couple months and throughout the rest of the year, related to, when you invest in LegionM, you're investing in the company, right? So
Hmm.
you're investing in a startup. That company, the startup, is going through this process where we're trying to create value in the company. But each one of our projects is another opportunity that by investing in the company, you own a little piece of everything we do.
Yeah.
But there's also this opportunity to, if you want to invest more in a specific project, we want to make that happen. We want to allow people to do that. That might happen. You could invest alongside of us, or you invest. And so anyway, we have a series of things that we'll be introducing,
That's exciting.
and we've been polling our community on, like, well, what's their interest level in doing that,
Yeah.
and we're getting good responses. So.
Yeah, no, that's super exciting to hear because I think that's the next level of it, right? Is that if fans are
And some of
super
them might have
engaged and
some pretty big names attached to them. You
yeah,
never know.
oh no, absolutely. I mean, I've been wondering if I had purchased the Girl with No Name, and my son and I were reading it, and I was curious if whether you can share it or not, is it if that will move into a potential series or feature or something in the future because I think it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, no, that project, I mean, it's been, all projects take a long, I mean, one thing about Hollywood is it moves really slowly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I comment, being more sort of Northern California oriented. I did study film in college, so,
Yeah.
but I cannot believe how slow it moves. It is maddening.
Really?
It's just one of these things.
Yeah.
And because Silicon Valley moves quickly,
Oh yeah.
people are responsive. If you're not, I think there's this sense of urgency in Silicon Valley that is hard to get. I mean, it does exist in certain places in Hollywood, but you have to create it because
Yeah.
the normal. When we first started the company, we met with Guillermo del Toro. He invited
Oh,
us to his
nice.
house. Yeah, it was amazing. He invited us to his house on a Sunday afternoon. Literally, he had heard about the company, thought it was really cool, knew one of our other advisors. He said, he reached out and said, "Hey, you guys want to come over and drink some tea in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon?" We went over to his house,
Wow.
his bleak house in LA, which is where he keeps all of his movie memorabilia, and he has his writing room where it's raining all the time and thunderstorm. I mean, it is like that by itself was a mind blowing experience. But Guillermo and he literally just wanted to meet with us and give some advice, and tell us that he was excited about what we were doing. And his parting words were, just remember, in Hollywood, nothing moves forward unless you make it move forward. And it was really good advice. I mean, it was
Yeah.
basically, objects in rest stay in rest, objects in motion move, and stay in motion. And it's anyway. It's a long answer. Hollywood, you got to create your urgency. Girl with No Name is absolutely, we're working on it. Actually, there's
Yeah.
amazing stuff. We haven't shared anything recently, but we've cast the girl. A
Oh, nice.
really, yeah, the lead that's going to play the girl. We're really excited to announce, and we're talking to a few others just to nail down the rest of the cast, and then we'll take it out for financing. But there's a lot of excitement about that project, and westerns, especially like an interesting new take on westerns.
Hmm.
That's the trend right now. It's I think when we first started that project, not so much. We had a lot of resistance to,
Hmm.
like, oh, westerns, um but now, with some of the recent successes in that genre, um, where it's perfect time. So
Yeah. No,
everything, it's been slower than we wanted, but it's coming.
yeah, no, it's exciting. I'm excited about all this stuff. I know you have many other things to do, so we don't want to take up a ton of your time on this. Just had a few questions here.
Yeah, no worries.
So as technology's evolved, and you see people using like their iPhones and their GoPros and YouTube and all that kind of stuff, how do you think that's going to fundamentally change filmmaking over the next 5 years? Because right now it's getting cheaper and easier and simpler for creative people to make the things that they want to make and get them out there.
Absolutely. Oh, it's funny because I feel like you teed that up for me, because literally just yesterday we introduced something just to our community. We haven't made a public announcement about it yet, but it's called Legion of Comedy.
Hmm.
And this is a television series, an unscripted television series that we're developing with National Lampoon. It will be a sketch comedy competition show. And so this is exactly, it's basically going out to the world that is so creative and has access to so many tools to submit their content. If you look at the volume of usage on TikToks and YouTube and, content that isn't produced by major studios, it's
Hmm.
absolutely massive. And
Yeah.
it's very entertaining. And so we want to kind of merge these two worlds in something that will be an app. And the other component about this format that we're really excited about is it makes sense for LegionM to do something like this because we already have a community of creators and
Hmm.
reviewers and people that will give feedback. So the way it works is we'll go out to the communities at large, even beyond our community, and solicit submissions. Those submissions get put into the app, and within the app, you're watching and reviewing content, kind of like what we sort of unconsciously are doing on TikTok, right? How long you watch something, whether you swipe up, uh, determines, and when you swipe up, how often did you watch it twice? Did you share it? All these things are they're data. They're data that tells the algorithm, oh, this is the content that people like or that
Hmm.
is better. Um, we're going to use a platform like that, our own platform, where we're going to aggregate this content, let the community tell us what works. We're going to bring on like a host or probably two hosts, a pair, um, to do a competition show. And then
I
if
love it.
your submission gets selected, then you come on the show, you work with other comedians to develop your next thing. And if you can stay on the show, I mean, I won't go into all the details, but we just put that out yesterday to our community to say, hey, who should we ask to host the show? And so our community, I mean, I don't even look today, but I'm sure we have hundreds of suggestions from our community, and we can start to see, or actually, I'm sure we have thousands by now, but we'll start to see, all right, what are we getting multiple requests for? Who are some of the common denominators? Then when we're casting this show, we have data and we can go out to, Keenan Thompson and say,
Hmm.
hey, we thought you'd be a great, host of this show. But when we put it out to our community, they're the ones that told us you should be hosting this show. And so now we have this added element where, when you're talking to, his or her agent, whoever it is, that's really valuable for them to know that not only, are they wanted by us, but our community is wanting them as well.
So that is like the perfect use case for especially our podcast because I feel like you described specifically like how you're using the data in order to kind of sell, these actors on the idea and the film or the show or whatever it is you're doing, and they can look at it and say, "Oh, so people already want me to do this. So I should definitely consider, looking at it or thinking about it." And that is a total reversal to them coming to you and saying, "Let me show you some clips of what I've done. I'm going to pitch you on me being the
Mhm.
host because you already have the data on that." So that's amazing. I mean, I feel like
I
the
mean, we're
data.
still going to go through the casting, and we'll probably
Sure.
still, have them do readings, and but as far as, I mean, if you think of it, how many comedians are out there, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
how many people could we potentially go to for hosts? And what's really nice is we are involving our community. We want them to have a vote. So, and it's real easy. So we introduce the project. So they, first of all, they just heard about the project yesterday,
Hmm.
and now they have this opportunity to suggest a host. All that, and we're already talking to potential hosts, but with all that data, it's just going to, make those conversations smoother.
And ultimately, you're de-risking, like you talked about before. And I guess one of my questions was is that when you were talking about de-risking, I was thinking about how like your company hasn't taken any venture money, correct? Like from a traditional venture capitalist, right? I'm not sure if you're planning on doing that in the future or anything, but I'm just going to point something out. So the fact is that we have all of the fans, and that's including myself, investing in. and kind of de-risking everything to a point where if you ever did want to make a huge investment, take a huge investment from a venture cap firm or something like that because you want to double down, triple down on your films or whatever it is, you're actually going into that pitch kind of the same way that you're using your fans right now to help you figure out what the films are, and saying, my fans are de-risking, my investors are de-risking your risk on this. So now's the time to take the plunge and make the investment, right? Like I see so many ways to kind of cut this data.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, what I would say is, first of all, we are open-minded
Yeah.
to. We haven't pursued it,
Yeah.
and mostly just because we're authentically community owned. And if we did take in any outside money, we have had some big studios and stuff like that. Talk about ideas, but nothing like formal and nothing that seemed fair to our community. And that's our first priority. So anyone that would come in has to understand that they're investing in something, but they can't be, diametrically opposed to the community. They have to
Oh
be
yeah.
behind, like, the idea is that the community comes first. And, and that can be a hard thing, especially with venture capitalists want,
Oh yeah.
multiples, and they want to, but there are, I think the smartest ones recognize that, oh, you know what, this community, even though they are also shareholders, they're the customers. They
Yeah.
are the consumers and the customer of this company. And just like nicely put, they are de-risking this
Hmm.
company.
Yeah.
They are. And I've talked to a lot of my venture capitalist friends. I mean, Legion or Moby TV raised a lot of VC money. That I think this combination, I think the smartest venture capitalists out there and are starting to recognize that this isn't a threat to them. I mean, some people consider it a threat, like this whole idea that, oh, anyone can be a venture capitalist. Oh, and all these communities can invest in these startups. And, that could threaten a VC firm, I guess, because it means now that entrepreneurs like us have other alternatives to venture
Hmm.
capital. But I think the smartest ones will recognize that those are the safest bets
Yeah.
because they've already been vetted by the marketplace. They already have other co-investors, and I think we'll probably start seeing a lot more of that,
Hmm.
where even some of these big companies that are on a trajectory towards an IPO
Hmm.
will do some equity crowdfunding
Yeah.
to to add to the pot as a syndicated deal. It'll be the private equity or the venture capital. They'll take the majority of it, but they'll carve off $5 million and it'll go to the community, or
Yeah.
in our case, the
Well, I mean,
fans.
how many times have you watched Shark Tank and someone came in and said, "Oh, I put it on Indiegogo or Kickstarter," and then they say, "Oh, great, what did you learn from the community during that time?" And then they invest in them after that because there's so many learnings you can acquire basically from having this many fans that are giving you feedback on a regular basis. And I'm sure there are fans of your platform and investors. I call them fans, but like investors on your platform that have looked at films and said, I don't really like that one as much, but I love this one. And it's not that you're going to say like, oh no, they didn't like, one of our options. It's like, oh yay, thanks for giving us a heads up
If
before we
enough
actually
people
pitch it.
said that, we would,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. If enough people weren't interested, we would dodge the bullet.
Yeah.
Like, we really do listen. We don't, like, the data doesn't drive every decision, but it's a factor in every decision. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And by this point, one of the coolest things about Legion M and about our community, and we're so grateful to the people that we have I mean, we have people in our community that have tattooed our logo on their body, and they get the Legion M license plate, and
Oh
we're
my gosh.
we're so grateful because and they are so supportive. One of the things that, like, one of our concerns when we started it is that we might be in this narrow band, right? That we have a community of people and the kind of content they want is very specific, and it would make it hard to, move outside that lane that we just, and that would be fine. And that would be like an interesting company, but it would be confined to, maybe it was just horror. We only did
Hmm.
horror. But the thing that we've learned by polling our community is they are massively open to things that we didn't expect them to be. I mean,
Yeah.
one of our probably a project at Legion M that our community is most excited about is a historical action picture. Like, who would have thought? And but it's got a purpose, and the reason, and they have a reason, and it came from them. That project literally came from our community.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, we're grateful, and we still have a long way to go, but we're excited. And we'll see
Well,
where this takes us.
thank you so much, Paul, for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. I just had one final question. Who owns the Legion M vehicle? The Cadillac.
The community owns it. It's owned by the company.
It's beautiful.
And yeah, it's funny because we get mixed reviews on the cat. Most people love it, and it comes to Comic Con, and now it's an icon in pop culture. And what's so great, like when we first announced the Cadillac and showed it, we already had it. I think when we like it was already part of our marketing propaganda
Yeah.
when we introduced the company. But we'd have some investors saying like, well, why do we have an old, you know, 59 Cadillac? That doesn't seem like a good use of money. But if you think about it, it actually is, because that car, first of all, when we bought it, it was not expensive.
Yeah.
Um, Second of all, most marketing expenses, if you're going to spend 25, 30 grand on a marketing expense,
Yep.
you're done. You spent it, that con's over. You don't have it anymore. This car appreciates in value every year.
Yeah.
So it's an investment. And now it's more famous than it ever was when we first bought it. Now this car is famous. If we did an auction for that car, it would sell for way more than we bought it for. And it pays for itself over and over. If we bring it to a Comic Con, they just want it there. They like, Silicon Valley Comic Con lets us park it in the lobby for
Yeah.
free.
I saw
And
that.
so
I
we
was
have
like,
all this
wow.
like free advertising, people walking by, but it's a cool, iconic looking car that people want to have around.
No, I think that was smart because actually it was the car that caught my attention in the video when you first
Yeah,
launched the
that's
company.
hilarious.
I was like, who's driving up in this car?
I love
Like,
it.
what is this all about? So,
But
it worked out great.
truthfully, literally, I mean, like we could almost, Rally Road, like how you can kind of co-own, like the Declaration of Independence. Like
Yeah.
literally, that car. That's how we think about it. It is owned by our whole community.
That's awesome.
Everybody owns a little piece of it. If you come to a Comic Con and you see that car, if you're an investor, you get to sit in it. You can get to, take pictures with it, do all that stuff. Like you're a part owner of that car.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Paul, why don't you let everyone know how they can get a hold of you or research Legion M or potentially being an investor, and then I will we'll close off here.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, you can find pretty much everything about the company at legionm.com. It's LEGION M is in million.com. And our social handles are Legion M official across pretty much all of them. And if anyone ever wants to reach out, they can send an email. If you send an email to team at Legion M, and if you're asking for someone specific, like me, just put my name in it and it'll get to me. We do get a lot of inbound. We do, we're very responsive, I think, on our email. Sometimes, if something gets directed to me or Jeff, sometimes we're just swimming in it. So we try to, respond as much as possible. But sometimes we don't get to all of it. But Brandy and our team are really responsive. And the last thing I want to mention is you don't need to invest in Legion M to join. You can join Legion M for free, completely risk free. So, and one of the reasons we did that is we really want people to A, understand what they're getting involved in, and B, we didn't want them to feel like, oh, they had to give their money before they could, you know, learn more about it.
Hmm.
And And in particular, like pretty soon, we're ending round 8 right now, and so we won't have a round open until we open round 9. So the only thing to do is you can join, and once we open round 9, then we'll let you know. I think there will be like a waiting list where you can sign up or make a reservation for round 9. And the last round sold out, and then we increased the cap and sold that out. And so that round was one of our biggest and fastest rounds we've ever had. So
Yeah, that one was huge. So congrats on
yeah,
that for sure. Like, and that ended up pretty quickly. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to us today. We really appreciate it. We'll be posting links to many of the sources that we referenced on Twitter, so you can find us and follow us at Twitter at the X Podcast One. That's the X Podcast number one. If you like this podcast and found it interesting or informative, it helps us a great deal if you subscribe or leave a review on whatever platform you. Thanks everyone, and we will see you all next week.